ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting episode of Fairfield 2.0 here in Fairfield, Iowa. 2.0, something like that. I'd love to introduce this cast of characters. I don't know what this show is going to be about, but we'll figure it out as we go along. We have on the very end here, artist extraordinaire Jim Weidel. In the middle, I was going to do like a sports thing. We're not going to go there. We have Mr. Andrew Edlin, who is an actor extraordinaire. And on the end here we have John Bovard, who is student extraordinaire. We got that down. Okay. And a writer, and we're going to get into that in a little bit.
You want to mention the tables?
We have a table, a very fine table. In fact, we'd like to take bids on this table. Let's just jump right in. Jim, just talk.
I'm fixated on the table.
You are now. Everything you've ever owned is on.
I
our
was
table
wondering
today.
if it's a little sexist. I mean, if there was like an attractive early 20s female, would we have a table? I don't think so. Just a thought.
You're a very sick man.
Well, not so much sick, but
Are you
ill.
Okay.
Well, that's
Can we
an
talk
English
about?
term. We
Yeah,
say sick.
Jason, who you can't see but we can see.
Yes.
And in fact, if I can persuade him with my hypnotic charisma to actually let me be the cameraman,
How can you not? How can you deny this
then
request?
I'm going to share Jason, the dark side.
Jason Strong, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, cameraman extraordinaire.
Let's hear it.
Co-producer, director, etc.
Let's hear it from our home audience.
Jason Strong.
Home
This is the
audience.
Jason Strong Show. Yes. By the way, I'm Mike Ragogna, in case anybody cared, but whatever.
The extraordinary.
Right.
The extraordinary.
The extraordinary strong man there. We are not going to have any fun today, so you might as well tune out now. But if we were to have fun, let's experiment with what that would be. Jim, get in there. Just dig in. What's your history on?
Well, okay,
give us your life.
Mike Ragogna is a big fan of mine. As of
true.
yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
I somehow managed to persuade him to come to Icon Gallery, which is 90 entire feet. Some feel it's at least 100 from Cafe Paradiso, and I'm hoping you read the interview.
I did. And the Louvre has nothing over the icon.
Yeah,
So I
well,
just have to say.
it's all the rage. But in any case, I would like to think that Icon Gallery is the little engine that could, the little icon that could, perhaps. It is a non-profit, believe me. Local, but maybe regional, though maybe tri-state, though maybe countrywide, though maybe international. Grotto of cutting-edge art. Grotto?
Grotto sounds good. I love that.
Who's for Grotto?
I'm for Grotto. I'm in.
All right.
Jason is into. Hello.
Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what? Yeah. So
About this grotto.
And lucky me, I managed to extend a show that features 37. That's American 37, not United Kingdom 37.
We're going to get to that, ladies and gentlemen, but first.
Works of art that you can still see. I don't know if anybody's actually going to, bother to hear or look at this, but should they, all four of them, and it is...
They're driving there now. You can hear the car starting.
Ambience! Godardian! Ambience!
I liked your work, by the way. I did go and see it.
Well, take it away.
Andrew.
Take
Edlin,
it away.
yes.
No, I
take it
can't
away,
take it
Andrew.
away. I don't have big enough walls, but I enjoyed it. Yes, it was very good. I put some of them the right way around. I hope you don't mind. But
And he lined up the colored ones with the colored ones. And
yes,
the
I
black and whites with the
organized
black
them
and
a
whites.
little better. But no, I enjoyed it. Yes, it was very how should we say, stimulating.
Yes.
Gave one a wider perspective on the nature of things in general.
How would you look, Jim? I have to reel you in. Who are your favorite artists? Now, I ask that usually musical, and you know what I mean by that. But
Favorite
artists, graphic artists, sculptors,
Visual
sculptors.
artists? Yeah, okay. We'll edit that out. He meant visual artists, and we're fine. But
edit that out.
maybe I'll answer it by way of a slight digression, and that is when you were, should you go to art school, say within the last 20 years or so. And
Is that something you've done, by the way?
Maybe I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where did you go?
Something had something to do with something that grows vine-like. You made it salty reference earlier.
Oh, yes.
Careful.
This is the Ivy League school.
Yes, there you go.
Yes.
Mhm. Oh,
Princeton.
yeah.
No.
Maybe. Except
Harvard.
not.
Except not. Okay.
Yeah, University of
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Ooh.
Go Quakers. Anybody here have a loop, 90-second loop of the Quakers fight song?
Can you sing us a little?
Probably later.
Okay, later.
Yeah.
Okay, we won't.
Yeah. I require a uniform.
One uncle, one mascot.
We all wear our uniforms in one way or another.
And drum and bugle.
All right, we don't have the drum and bugle. Come on, so come on. You're stalling. Let's
Perhaps
go.
I digress. Anyway.
Perhaps.
Yeah, okay. Take it away.
Take what away?
No. We're staying right here. Jim, come on.
All right. You would find out, should you want to fervently, innocently, naively, childlike, want to study painting, that that would be ill-advised because those who know things are quick to remonstrate and admonish that there is no painting. Painting is over. That's antiquated. Mm. And you know, if you want to see some paintings, sure, you could go to, let's say, the Met, which is short, American short for Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, which is short
for the baseball team
for New York City. Sorry. What?
No, nothing.
No,
nothing.
great.
Move along. Nothing to see here.
Yeah. So Jason's laughing. That's some indication.
Yeah, see, he caught it.
He's jolly. All right.
No, my paint is New York.
Can I? Hey, Jason, permission granted. Presumptuous
to continue.
permission granted. Can I take care of? Can I do the camera work now?
This is what he called free association.
This really is the most
Because
tangential
no one would
show
take
we've
it.
ever had. What did I say? What did I say, Fairfield? Okay.
And
Lisa
why is
Cohen,
that
we're going to have
so?
a little conversation later.
Why is that so? I would say that probably the reason painting as such is sort of entombed. Pretty good.
Entombed,
We're
another
winging it.
grotto and
Entombed.
entombed. We've got two good ones
In
today.
grotto, in say the
It's
Met,
entombed in the grotto.
was short for Metro. Yeah, we know.
Okay.
Is that to really do painting justice is subjective here. You really have to bother. You have to get materials and gesso your canvas, which takes a good hour, and then maybe learn things, and then maybe observe things. And who's up for that anymore? I not too many, right?
So that's why you say painting is kind of over.
Yeah, and so I thought, okay, fine. I'm going to extrapolate from this, paradigmatic information.
Ooh.
Grotto, we got grotto,
Grotto.
we've got entombed, and we've got paradigmatic.
Yeah, nice. I am so
Said
happy.
it twice.
And he said it twice.
Paradigmatic.
Heart be still.
Yeah. So, is that this is a golden opportunity, and I can just, observe my life away by means of generating work through this long in the saddle discipline of painting.
So,
And
but
how does that for an answer to who my favorite painters are? All right, a quick thumbnail. Corot, Bonnard, advertisement. See the Phillips collection. It's off the DuPont Circle. You can take the metro right up from DC. DuPont Circle, yeah, Phillips, Bonnard. I even have some Bonnard references here because this is my show, clearly.
don't forget Bovard over here. It's his show.
Bovard! Bonnard! Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
Who else?
That's
And
life.
for those who might unwittingly presume that, I like realist painters. I do. Having named two of them.
Well, who are they?
But Corot and Bonnard. But I could go back all the way to 1600s, Vermeer.
Do it. Throw a name out there.
Rembrandt.
Okay. Throw one more name
A quick
out there.
aside. Picture this. Great book, written in 1988. You're going to have to guess who who the author is. That's going to be a sub theme throughout this my show.
Apparently,
and he wrote Catch-22. Big. That's my hint. This is what I do.
It's a hell of a hint.
This is what I do when I say the word.
So, oh my God.
Anybody for the grand prize?
Said it's a hell of a hint.
Oh, Heller. Yes, Heller of a hint. Oh my God.
All right.
He's
All right.
white hot.
Jim,
the man is white hot.
Jim, we're gonna come back to you, and
I'm done.
We're gonna come back.
I'm
to
done.
You and your backpack.
That's it. I'm
in
leaving.
a moment, and the
I'm
assembly
leaving.
of things. Andrew.
Yes.
Andrew Edlin, by the way, you are you've been interested in acting since you were a wee child.
Well, my grandfather was an actor, so it's sort of part of, people talk about being raised in musical families, and I suppose I was raised sort of in an acting family.
Was that how you guys would have fun? You all would do little plays and stuff?
Sort of a little bit, yes.
Nice.
It was certainly acceptable.
Nodding off.
In the way that, playing the flute or something would be in a musical family, or miming would be in a mime family. I don't know if there are such things, but anyway.
The mime families.
So, yeah, I mean, I was acting from a pretty early age, and at school, just little things here and there. I did, in thinking about this show, remember that the first thing I was ever in was a review, and I had to play an American. Isn't that odd that I should play an American?
Do you remember your lines still?
I remember one of them, which was, "Hey, buddy, buddy, hey." That was it.
Brilliant!
I was trying to persuade someone not to jump off a pier or something, and in the end I jumped off
a
myself.
pier
After hearing that.
After hearing that.
Yes.
It would have touched my soul.
Well, it was all, it's vague. Then I remember the second play I was in was actually a play that I've done twice, oddly enough, which was Toad of Toad Hall, which is the play written by A.A. Milne, who wrote Winnie the Pooh, from Kenneth Grahame's The Wind in the Willows.
How old were you then?
Oh, 10 maybe.
10.
So I played the chief ferret. I was double cast, the chief ferret and the barge woman. And then when I came to Fairfield, one of the first plays we did at the then Odyssey stage was Toad of Toad Hall, and I played Mr. Badger. And Mr. Badger remains one of my favorite roles. Very lot of gravitas.
Do you have any lines from?
Well, actually, my favorite line from that is one that I improvised, and it always got a huge laugh. There's a bit in Toad of Toad Hall when Badger is sort of asleep in his chair, and the field mice come to sing carols at his door. And they're singing, "Good King Wenceslas looked out." And Badger goes and picks up one of the field mice at the door and says, "And if you bother me again, you'll have to look out." And then puts him down and sort of gives them some money. And as he's going back to his chair, I just improvise, "Stupid mice."
Nice.
It's not even in the play, but it always got this huge laugh. So, when I think of Toad Hall, it's always stupid mice.
When he says it, I don't want to jump off a pier.
No.
Well, I'm glad about that.
Yeah. That's my
Stupid mice.
Then I was at school at one of these private boarding schools, which people in America have these even stranger after Harry Potter views of.
And why? What are you saying?
We did a lot of plays, and there was a very dynamic man called Duncan Noel Payton, who was our drama director, and he had a very clever way of doing it, in which he would put all the younger kids that wanted to be it into a sort of huge non-speaking chorus,
right?
And then gradually they would graduate to having some speaking parts or leads or whatever. So I was in a very strange series of things, including Boris Godunov, the opera by Mussorgsky.
Oh.
Where they brought in singers. I mean, this was not exactly the normal fare of English public schools.
Now, you can sing. When did you start? Did you have voice lessons and all that?
Yes, jumping ahead. I'd always done, the plays I'd done were always normal plays, what is sometimes called, very unfortunately, I think, straight or legitimate theatre, which sort of gives an impression about musical theatre, which may be true, but is unfortunate. But I didn't actually do any musical theatre until about 6-7 years ago. I'd never done any. First show I did was for the area community theatre here, and I did Oliver. I played Mr. Bumble.
Ah.
Small boy for sale, he's going cheap, only 20 guineas. And I took...
Nice.
Yeah, he's a fairly small boy. I could sing it to him. Anyway, so I took voice for about a year or so with Doug Daller.
Doug Daller.
Who is...
Never heard of him.
Shout out.
Absolutely a wonderful voice teacher.
Doug.
I mean, apart from the fact that he, improves your voice, which is naturally what you go there for, there was a side effect which I hadn't expected, which was that I was suddenly able to recognize when other people were off pitch.
Uh-oh.
Which is both a blessing and a curse. But Doug is wonderful, and he gave me lots of exercises which I still use, whether I'm actually singing in a role or whether I'm just, doing a speaking part.
The squat thrusts are my favorite of his exercises.
Well, they're all vocal stuff mainly, but they're very good. They're very good. I mean, there are the normal, the javelin throws.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
those sorts of things. But we can't do those in here, obviously.
No, not today.
And anyway, I don't have a pig or a stepladder, so.
Just what kind of exercises is Doug Daller teaching in this town of Fairfield?
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Oh God, I signed the parchment in blood, and now I've talked about the stepladder. Well, at least I didn't mention the camel. But anyway, to get back to, I've been doing musical theatre, and
are the cops going to see this? Are the local police?
So anyway, then I was asked to play in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, which was the opening show at the Sondheim. Randy West asked me to do that, which is, there is some singing and dancing involved, far more than I wanted, because I can't dance to save my life. As I say, at a single-sex boarding school, dancing was discouraged.
Was dancing discouraged at your single-sex boarding school?
Oh, very much so, yes.
Yes. It normally is. It has implications. But anyway, so I played Erroneous, which was the part that Buster Keaton played in the movie. And so I suddenly began to understand that musical theatre was wholly more complex in many ways than so-called legitimate theatre. Again, a strange term, I can't help feeling. But and then a few years ago, again for the community theatre, I played Professor Higgins in My Fair Lady.
Oh, cool.
Which
right.
Which is why can't a woman be more like a man? A wonderful part for me because one, I'm English. It's actually not as easy as you think. People always say, "Oh, well, there's no singing in that, is there?" It's not true. Because actually what Rex Harrison did, who of course made the role iconic, was he would say something and then hit the note afterwards, which is not the easiest thing to do, to find it out of nowhere. Which is why my favorite year was really worked well for him, because he didn't have to sing in that one. It's, I loved doing that. I mean, so I'm musical theatre. I was also in, oh my goodness, Into the Woods. What? Into the Woods. Into the Woods.
Never heard
Sometimes the woods are just trees, the trees are just wood. Did you know that Sondheim in his youth wrote crossword puzzles for the New York Times? It explains a great deal about his lyrical invention. Brilliant man. He really is. And Into the Woods is just amazing, and we had a very short rehearsal period. It was a great show. It was a great show. And I played the steward. It's funny, there always seems to be a role for an older guy who can't sing and dance very much. I think it must be where you normally put the angel, or the person that has to be placated, and there's always one in any show. And so I had to work the sound on that one. I wasn't going to go anywhere near that one. I seem to have picked up a few of those roles. Musical cues, not sound. Sorry. Through Way Off Broadway, So I've been doing musical theatre more than anything else, really, apart from my Churchill show, which of course is a straight show. All right, let's get to that. You have this Churchill show, and you're having King Lear come up soon. But first let's start with Churchill. Yes. For the people who've experienced the Churchill show, this was like a really, the word wouldn't be heart-wrenching because it's not that kind of a stop it. But it would be very... That or bath towel. Well, what I like to think about the Churchill show, rather like Shakespeare, Shakespeare has comedy, tragedy, and history, and that's exactly, in a way, what the Churchill show has, all of those elements, and they hopefully seamlessly segue one into the other. I did write it, I researched it, and obviously a lot of it is in Churchill's own words, and actually more than you'd think isn't. But, so it's a 1.5 hour one-man show, and I started to do it first in 1997, and I've upgraded it and edited it and changed it, and I've had Al Constantino direct it the last couple of times, and he brought a great deal to the table in terms of, reshaping it and so forth. So it's an enormous luxury, as any performing artist will tell you, regardless really of what area you're in, to be able to work on the same project for 15 years and keep coming back to it and improving it and changing it. Because normally when you do a show, particularly on stage, by and large, you do it, it's done. It's over. You have a rehearsal period, a performance period, bye-bye, cast party, strike, over. But with Churchill, I've been able to, perform it in various places and really, nail it to a large extent.
And the audiences get it.
Oh, yeah, it's very approachable because it does have this, element of, all three elements. This is his personal life, the very famous speeches, which even today, are very famous. Like, let me think of one now, which is terribly difficult for me, as you may imagine. Something like, "The Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain has now begun. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. Upon it depends our British life." That sort of thing. And then,
all right, hold on. That's
and then, of course, he's just basically telling jokes. When I did the research for this show, I thought you could basically do a stand-up comedy night with Churchill. There's enough stories to do this.
Or just using Churchill's voice to tell the jokes.
There's some there's some famous ones like Bessie Braddock once said to me at a party, "Winston, you're drunk." I replied, "Yes, Bessie, and you're ugly, but in the morning I shall be sober."
Nice.
And Lady Astor, who said to Churchill, "Winston, if you were my husband, I'd poison your soup." I replied, "Nancy, if you were my wife, I'd drink it."
Of course. That's nice.
And then George Bernard Shaw, who sent a note to Churchill saying, "Dear WSC," it's Churchill's initials, "enclosed are 2 tickets to the first night of my new play, St. Joan. Bring a friend if you have one."
Okay.
I replied, "Dear GBS, thank you for your invitation to the first night of your new play, which I must decline as I have another engagement. Please send 2 tickets to the second night, if there is one."
Yeah. Very nice.
And then, his personal dilemma, he was always very much concerned with his relationship with his father, who he felt disappointed that his father never not only never recognized any value in him when he was alive, but his father died very young. Yeah. So his whole career really was an attempt to try and prove to his dead father that he was worth something, which is, when you think about all that Churchill achieved, is obviously absurd on any sort of objective level. But he was, trying to fill this black hole of disapproval. So I sort of play with that too. It's very much an important theme, that what allows him at the end of the play to finally give up the reins of power and go into retirement is that he imagines his conversation that he has with his father, and that finally he's allowed to let go. So the play, what makes the play work is that it does have a spine, it does have a development, it does have a plot. It's not just someone standing up and saying, "Hello, I'm Thomas Jefferson," or whatever, I mean, those things are okay in their way, but they're not dramatic. They're not really theatrically interesting. And the Churchill play works because it does have this beginning, middle, and end, which all plays need.
Right.
It's a somewhat thin vehicle, but it works. And you don't need too much, because the audience will always go with you, provided you give them something to actually go with.
Andrew, what would you have me curious about the conversation between the father and the son? What is that built into? Do you have the
I wouldn't want to
there?
sort of do that in this context, because it requires a little more emotional preparation. But I mean, essentially, he's saying, "Is it enough, sir?"
Great, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I go? can I give that poor bugger Anthony Eden his chance, who was waiting in the wings and had been his sort of number 2, waiting to take over for like 20 years. So even that has its comedic element to it.
Yeah.
But
do you make passing jokes at how inept you think maybe the person?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's always making jokes about everybody. I mean, he makes a joke about Clement Attlee, who's the leader of the Labour Party, the opposition party, who had been his deputy prime minister. And he says, my successor as prime minister was Clement Attlee, a modest man who had a great deal to be modest about.
Use that.
And one of the things that's sad, it seems to me, in today's world, is that level of wit is completely absent, almost completely absent.
Yeah, you're not.
When I watch politicians, which I really try very hard not to do, they're just not interesting. They're not funny. When they try to be earnest, they just come across as creepy. But that natural level of wit, which was just the common currency of politicians of a previous age, and certainly of Churchill's time.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, I mean, he was 1875 to 1874 rather than 1965, so he lived to be 90. He spanned, from the heart of the Victorian period into the middle of the Beatles. I Feel Fine was number 1 on the day that he died, just to give you some kind of period.
Great fact.
So he's in the middle of the swinging 60s when Churchill died. I mean, it seems completely absurd, but he lived a long time.
Right.
Anyway, I could talk about Churchill for at least an hour.
We could do a Churchill show. I think one of the things I wanted to ask you about the emotional part. Now, you wanted to prepare. What is your? There are many levels to the characters you play. Do you do any kind of prepping beyond research? Do you do, for instance, acting exercises? Do you do things through you're accessing? The old. I get not joke, but the old thought used to be, if you want to cry during something, think of your dog, Fluffy, dying or whatever. Is that you obviously don't do that? But how do you prep?
It's a very individual thing. I was lucky to study under Steve White, and Steve White was trained in the Meisner technique of acting, which is designed to make you spontaneously in the moment,
right?
To behave truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Great line, perfect. Yeah.
That is the description of the Meisner technique in a nutshell. And so you're reacting to what the other person does. You are not having some pre-packaged, pre-prepared thing which you just deliver at a certain point. If you ever see actors do that and you see them do it all the time, it is not interesting.
Yeah.
What is interesting is an actual engagement with the actor. And if the other actor's cue to you is, I think they've hidden the haddock underneath the carpet, they could say that any number of different ways. And if my line is, what have they done with the haddock? It could be, what have they done with the haddock? I mean, it could be anything. But I don't plan what I'm going to say. Yeah. It depends how you say the line.
Right.
Why did I choose that line? I have no idea. But
speaking of haddock.
Yes. But so it's always spontaneous. If you're acting with other actors who've also been Meisner trained, and when I say Meisner trained, it's not like some exclusive way that all other actors don't know how to do it. Everyone has that ability to be spontaneous and in the moment if they're a good actor, but that really cultures it in you through the exercises that you do. My ideal way to prep for an actual performance would be to run some of those exercises, some physical exercises that literally physically warm the body up. I'll normally do a little bit of mock fencing or something like that. Sometimes some mock drumming.
Nice.
There was I think it's actually Meisner who said this. There was one actor who would prep by trying to take the ladder, the steel ladder that was attached to the side of the theatre wall and led up into the flies, and rip it off the wall. Couldn't do it, of course, but it was fun trying. And by the time he came on, he was so physically warmed up that he went straight into the piece. Because that's also the sign of, an actor who knows what they're doing, is that you come in warmed up. You don't wait till the second half or 10 minutes in, by which time the audience has already gone to sleep.
Well, and it's also revving up the engine of a car. I mean, you've got to...
Yeah, that whole thing, which, is sort of obvious, but it's amazing how many people don't do it. Actors are inherently lazy. And if they can get away with staying in their comfort zone and not doing anything extra and thinking they can get away with it, then they will. Whereas, of course, the great actors are always doing something extra which gets your attention.
Is there a school of acting which teaches actors to be slackers?
No, I think they're just directors that allow them to get away with it, which is not quite the same thing.
Nice.
So my prep, if I'm prepping, I think what I do, I will certainly do a lot of voice prep, particularly if I'm doing Churchill, because it's an hour and a half and it's just me. Mm-hmm. So I'll do a lot of Doug's exercises and, way before, not just that night, but, in preparation for weeks.
When you've done Churchill, have you recorded it?
It's on DVD.
It is on DVD.
It's actually a pretty good DVD, though, I say it myself. And I was telling Jason about this. We might actually put it on FPAC because the nice thing about it is I wrote it, I act in it, I own the rights, I am it. It's all mine. It's all mine.
It's
mine. It's under my control. So it's already in the library, so people can get it out from there.
We may want to have a double header and have Churchill after the show.
And I sell it. I sell DVDs of it.
Do you? Where do you sell this?
Oh,
on the internet, perhaps?
Yeah, you can. ChurchillPlay.com. You can contact me if you want to. But at the other end, you could come into my place of work. Century 21.
Century 21.
On the...
I just noticed,
You liar. On the northwest corner of the square, and I normally keep a few copies, 50 or 60 in there, ready for sale. $20 a pop. It's a pleasant evening's entertainment. And actually, it is a really well done DVD because we, did a proper shoot and we, fed the audio directly into the camera, so it's not one of these sort of embarrassing it's not one of those
pixelation. I come back to a full
the sort of thing that would make Jason wince so much he'd give himself a hernia if he heard it. It's a really good quality. Nice. And it's a fun evening. Yeah,
it would be very hard to get Jason to wince. Jason is the most tolerant human I think I've ever met. Jason Strong, ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for Jason Strong.
But you happened to mention in there King Lear.
Yes.
And that's coming up. That's about as opposite from Churchill in one way as another, as it could be. Now, what am I saying? Churchill is a one-man play, yes. And this has, to date, I think 18 in the cast.
Including our buddy Matt Spear?
Including our buddy Matt Spear, who plays the Fool. Oh, and he also plays the Fool. That's his character. Yes. So, that has is a very good cast, and I've cut. If anybody knows about Lear, and is thinking, "Oh my God, King Lear," it's not the full play, which can run to 3.5 hours, and it's also not this sort of dystopian gloom festival where people throw 2 or 3 buckets of depression, gloom, and nihilism on the ground and then roll in it and then sort of smear it on each other. It's not that way.
Nihilism, no, we've got one from you for today. Thank you.
Yes. And Lear has been abused in that way, particularly since World War II, but actually it's been abused more or less since it was written in one way or another. But it has a lot of comedy in it, and I'm adding as much to it as I can, because to my mind, there are tragic things that happen. There are bad things, bad judgments, bad consequences.
And the bell was tolling just now, by the way, for the consequences.
Yes, and it was...
Did you hear?
Never asked for whom the bell tolls, because it tolls for everybody.
Everybody.
That's why it's so damn loud. But anyway, so you got the comedy element and the tragedy element are sandwiched together, and that is often how it is. I mean, when people talk about gallows humor or black comedy,
my favorite kind.
It's just in the nature of things. I mean, just to give you an example from Lear, and I'm very careful about giving bits from Lear, because then people will think that's what the play is like.
Well, I was going to ask.
And it really isn't. But there is a bit in it where the Duke of Gloucester, having been gulled by his bastard son, and I use that term advisedly.
Jason, are we going to have to air this after midnight?
He's illegitimate.
There you go.
There you go. Played
not after midnight. After
played by Jesse Bailey, as a just inimitable. That's a good word. Inimitable villain.
Inimitable grotto. We got
Yes,
this.
an inimitable villain has fooled his father into thinking that his legitimate son, Edgar, is actually a bad guy, whereas in fact it's Jesse, who you should have known because he's dressed from head to foot in black, is actually the bad guy. And so,
Who would have known?
as the long-term consequence of this piece of deceit, as in this subplot, Gloucester is blinded. And so he's blinded, he's wandering around the stage, and in disguise, his good son is looking after him. And then Lear comes in, who, for reasons we won't go into too quickly, has gone mad by this point. Completely mad, is wearing sort of flowers round his head, and has just completely lost it. And Gloucester says to him, "Do you know me?" And Lear looks at him, and this is a guy who's got no eyes and a sort of bloody bandage, you know, and he says, "I remember thine eyes well enough." I mean, it's just, it's a sort of joke where you go, "Oh," you know, I mean, it's because it's black comedy.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's another point where Goneril, the eldest daughter of Lear, evil character played by Tina Nelson.
Who is this Tina Nelson again?
She's a very, very talented, wonderful singer, and teaches the middle school here in town.
Taught me.
And
She
taught
taught
you,
you.
yes, made you what you
Grade? Seventh grade, yeah.
Seventh
Yeah.
grade. We're gonna get into this.
and she's also my girlfriend, but that's got nothing to do with my boosting her immense talents, which she genuinely has. Anyway, she's playing Goneril, the eldest daughter, and she has poisoned her sister, played by Margaret Clare, her sister Regan. And so Regan is walking around the stage going, sick, oh, sick. And Regan just sort of comes forward almost Groucho-like and says, "If not, I'll never trust poison." I mean, so these sort of lines in Lear as a tragedy are not in the other tragedies that Shakespeare
Because
wrote.
the other tragedies of Shakespeare are,
Not funny.
they're just stone cold.
They're not. Whereas Lear has this very Alice in Wonderland quality about it, very surreally funny. It's definitely got a lot of very funny, strange elements to it, as well as this tragic thing. But essentially, Lear is a story of redemption. This is about a man, Lear himself, who makes very bad decisions, and then at the end of it, he has this reconciliation with his daughter, who he's banished, his good daughter.
Right.
He does have one good daughter, played by Madeline Sloat, character of Cordelia.
Cordelia.
And then, you know, he dies, you know, and at the end, but there is this sense of redemption, which of course is normally completely, you know, by the nihilist rolling people don't want to know about any redemption. They just everyone to die, be miserable, leave in a sense of utter depression. And if a few members of the cast and the audience and the crew, for that matter, you know, try and commit suicide within half an hour of the end of the play, they think they've done pretty well. Which is not the way I look at King Lear. I think it's probably Shakespeare's greatest play. And I've cut it down to 2 hours. Very important that you get this point, folks. So it'll start at 7:30, you'll be home by 10. This is not something that will be exhausting and tedious and, you know, you feel like you have to pretend you like it because it's culture with a capital C. It is actually going to be a really enjoyable evening. And it's also going to have lots of sword fights.
Ooh.
Real sword fights with real swords, arranged by Steve White, who's brilliant at this stuff.
Nice.
And he's very excited at the competency of the actors that are doing this. So there's going to be a lot of this sort of Douglas Fairbanks Jr.
So let me get this straight. Matt Spear is going to be walking around with a sword on
No,
stage?
he plays the fool. He doesn't have a sword. You don't give a fool a sword.
Worried for Fairfield.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Fairfield.
No.
2.0 is the
No
show.
sword.
Okay.
No sword. He does actually play a couple of minor roles, and in one of those he has a sword for about 10 seconds. But I think that's
I'm
safe.
saying, this is what I'm saying.
That's
Fairfield.
safe because he plays the captain, and he doesn't get. But so there's
Still,
so Lear
I'm
is
scared.
the good things is Lear is 2 hours. It has comedic elements and it has sword fights. It also
Sword
has
fights.
original music written by Carol Negro.
Carol wrote the music to this.
So which will be played
Okay.
live on the cello on the stage. So you'll be able to see the... So we're going to do it in very much traditional way. And also, folks, no microphones.
Good.
No
one. Good,
microphones.
Good.
Because believe it or not, for 2,000 plus years, people did not need a microphone. to fill a small theatre the size of the Sondheim, and it is a small theatre. It's only 500 seats.
So you're gonna have the basically all the actors
Actually,
acting in the seats.
Actually, use their voices to project into
that's
the
another
auditorium.
way of doing it, yes.
Oh my God, it's very revolutionary, and this hasn't been tried. This hasn't been tried.
Genius.
Very revolutionary for a couple thousand years.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my goodness. So, we'll be having live music, no mics, and basically it'll be exactly the way it was done at the Globe, which was Shakespeare's own theatre. The costumes will be nice. There'll be a few props. There's a few odd bits of furniture, but, there'll be no backdrops. We'll have lights, of course, and maybe some lighting effects. And Bob Horline is going to be doing the storm. He is the Stormmeister. There is a very famous scene in the middle of Lear where Lear is thrown out of the house by his evil daughters and runs out into the storm and goes mad. And so that scene will be choreographed, I think that's the right word, by Bob Horline, which is very exciting. Irene Murphy, who is a total genius with costumes, is doing the costumes. So I've managed to get together a crew of people who are really very brilliant in their own areas to bring all this stuff together so that it should be a very exciting experience. It opens on August 23rd at the Sondheim, 8 shows, Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings, Sunday afternoon. You can go on the Sondheim website and buy tickets whenever you like. It's been up there for some months. And a splendid time is guaranteed for all except the Earl of Gloucester, who gets his eyes gouged out. But, I mean, you can't please everybody.
There's got to be a little... it's a tragedy, right? So Margaret Clare, I love Margaret Clare, is in this. Matt Spear, good guy, in this. Tina Nelson.
Steve White plays the Earl of Gloucester. Ed Hipp plays the Earl of Kent. We've got David Patterson, who's one of my co-directors, playing Cornwall. Tom Terrian, who's playing the Duke of Albany. Eli Place, who plays the Duke of Burgundy. Fred Huckey plays the King of France. Oh, good grief, I'm going to forget somebody.
What are you playing in this?
Brendan Thomas is playing Oswald.
Not Lee Harvey Oswald. No.
Not Lee Harvey Oswald, no.
I'm playing JFK.
We're going to get to this in a minute.
And of course, one of the weird things about Shakespeare and Lear is it's been done in so many different ways. And everyone, all these sort of famous actors have played Lear, and they normally wait till they're pretty old, and Olivier and Ian McKellen and Derek Jacobi and so forth. I've decided not to wait because I think I'm going to do it now while I still have a little energy, and also it's 2 hours long, so I think it'll be. Nice. It'll be okay. It's just a wonderful role, and it's just got sort of great speeches in it.
Nice,
great speeches.
Jim,
Guy,
you've been sitting there so patient.
The camera loves him.
The camera does love him, but the camera loves you too.
Well, let me just say, real quick, there's some lovely things that overlap in my particular discipline, and that's your skills are intensified and increased to the degree you're present. And should you wonder how it is that I do those paintings, they're all from life. And so I sit there and observe to the extent that the moment is sustained over a goodly length of time. I mean, it's just a kind of vapor trail, as it were, of that sustained observation. And it's intensified by cues and procedures that might be something you cultivate in your training. And I think Jane Frelicker, great painter, Jane Frelicker, said, when asked, why are you a realist painter? And she said, I could never have thought of this.
Beautiful.
It's so outside the intellect and ideational, perceptions. And then real quick, eyes poked out. If realism has a spark today, and I so utterly do feel that way, and I love abstract painting, so we didn't get to that. But if you recall John Ruskin, who wrote modern painting, and is 1800s, we're talking later, he lobbied for what he called the argument of the eye. My big finish. Argument of the eye. And all I'm doing, and a handful of noble others, are doing is resuscitating and reinvigorating the argument of the eye. I'm done.
Which brings us to John Devon. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. I'm a little sleep deprived, actually. But
Oh, I'm sorry.
coffee, actually. Very much so.
I hope the show didn't get
Oh,
you
no,
in the
no,
other-
no, no. It's energizing me. It really is. I'll tell you, I'm doing much better now.
What do you do? I have my obvious question I want to ask you, and I want to get into this. But after having these discussions, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're a young guy. You're in Iowa State, right?
No, University of Iowa.
University of Iowa. Like I said, you're in the University of Iowa, and you've got your whole future ahead of you. You have somebody here who's a marvelous actor. If you've seen him, you know this guy's a marvelous actor, and you have a marvelous painter over here. What with the visual arts? I would love to. I'd love to, hear what are you thinking when you hear stuff like this? Does it open up? I know you want to go into writing. I know you want, and you're looking at stuff like this. How do you make a decision to what your future is? It's like really difficult, isn't it?
Extremely.
Especially after a show like this. It's like, what am I going to do now?
I've throughout my life, I've dabbled in all of the arts, and because I've grown up in Fairfield. I was born in a Hummel hospital actually, but my house was in Fairfield. So,
yeah.
And so I initially started painting as a little kid, just like with watercolors and giving them to my sister or something. And
Yeah.
then in high school, I acted. I was a mime actually.
I know.
I was not
In
a
a
mime
family?
family. Not a mime family.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, just myself. But I guess I could be a bit of a family for myself actually at times. But
We are all families unto ourselves.
Indeed.
But are you? But you also what you have gravitated towards
Yes.
most recently is things like writing.
yes, my brother introduced that to me. My brother Matt, who's my closest in age.
How many people are in your family?
There are five siblings, including myself, and
Wow.
then my parents. And there's Matt, Mike, Greg, Tess, and so
Four
Where,
boys.
where, are
Yes.
you, where are you in order?
I'm the youngest. That was in reverse order of. That was in youngest. of
I'm the
course.
youngest
So,
as well. Interesting.
yeah, but he started writing poetry and he did theater, and I was like, hey, that's an interesting idea. So I went ahead and tried it. I got on speech team in high school
Nice.
here at FHS,
Nice.
and I went to Allstate my freshman year,
Ah.
and then. Yeah, I don't know.
Nice.
Um,
You've also gone into you've
Yeah.
done some work. You
And-
showed me how one day you and I were at Cafe P and
Yes.
you were suddenly like I don't know how the conversation started, but it had something to do with websites.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were like, "Hey, you've been to my website," and I'm like, "What do you what are you doing there?" Well, on your website. What are you doing there? So we looked at your work. And I was amazed. You had me sitting. It was sort of like, okay, here, take this. And I was sitting there, I guess, with your computer. And I was looking at this, was reading it, and I'm going, that's pretty far along for someone who's like, who's dabbling. And that's how I think you were describing yourself. What I would love it if you could just read a couple of the things that you've written in the past, and or one thing, whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But just to give a flavor of what where your head's been at. David Larice, we had David Larice on the show, and David Larice was doing some poetry, and it's always amazing. It's very different hearing it from actually reading it on the paper. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
so
definitely.
may I hand you this, sir, or do you need
Yes.
this even?
I do. I actually wrote this a little over a year ago, probably. Actually, almost a year and a half ago.
Nice.
I only had one piece for myself.
And this was on your blog. This is on your website.
Yes, this is which
and what
I
is your
haven't
website?
updated since I actually showed you.
Well, it's still
Because
cool though. What is your website address?
It's meanderinghermit, one word, .blogspot.com, I believe, if I remember correctly.
One more time.
meanderinghermit.blogspot.com.
All right.
And so this piece is called Water. I carry my water in a camelback up the mountain. I reach to the sky so as to try to kiss his might. The Lord loves me and you. This I know, as I have seen it. He tells me, go forth. So I walk to the city, my camelback swinging. I have purpose, I have seen it. In the streets, children cry. Grown men eat from dumpsters. I go to my red brick house, open the double doors, spring to the kitchen fire. Copper pots line the crook of the ceiling and the wall. Choosing precisely the right one, deep-bellied, handles on both sides, place it on the stove. Flames envelop the base. Enter tomato, enter basil, enter oregano, enter onion, broth, chicken, milk, and just enough spice to give it some personality. Cooked to a creamy liquid of a red-orange hue. More water fills my camelback, and I remove the soup from the flame into individual meals with sourdough on the side. To the streets I return grinning. They flock to me. They love me. I am a shining citizen. My camelback fills so the seams stretch as I hand out the meal. They chew on the soup-soaked bread for hours. So much nourishment that they had lacked has finally given them the strength to act. I know he is pleased with me. For how could he not be? I have brought the masses wonders. I go to the mountain. I reach up to the clear sky. Not even an airplane streak blocks my view of the heavens. I pray for glory and the goodness of mankind, for children to have toys, men to have fresh-cooked meals each day. A bolt of lightning flashes from the sky, striking my camelback. My water spills down the mountain. Black.
Nice.
Very nice.
And this is, I guess this was inspired by your first evening at University of Iowa? What was...
No, I've just, religion is a very, it's I think obviously a religious poem. Religion has always been a very key part of my life because my mom is Catholic and my father is a Gnostic.
Your father's a Gnostic?
Yes.
We have to have a conversation. Everything fascinates me about
He's
is
a
it
very
Gnosticism?
interesting guy. Gnosticism, yeah.
Yeah.
Which
Narcissism,
every Gnostic
Not
has
narcissism.
every Gnostic has their own not narcissism.
No, not Gnosticism.
Every Gnostic has their own viewpoint of what it really is.
I know. I've noticed that.
Yeah.
There were a couple of in California, for instance. I went to a couple of Gnostic. I guess they were lectures or whatever, and they were two very different things, and I'm like, what? There must be some union of all of this, and I couldn't figure it out.
It literally means to just believe that there's something out there. Like agnostic is like you don't know. I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
But so it was just a very interesting dichotomy growing up with those two, and just like going to church every Sunday until I was 18, and I could finally say, I don't want to go.
Right. It's really wonderful. Are you inspired by? Are there writers which have influenced you, or that you go to read, or you're discovering?
It's
now?
really just the diversity of Fairfield that I grew up with. Actually, that's really the main influence I have. I've only really started reading heavily about 2 years ago. Actually, I did read growing up as well, just not. It was bits and pieces. It was like bits of Shakespeare, bits of Wordsworth, or.
So really, were you inspired? Well, then here's another. Speaking of Fairfield, were you inspired by? Does the phrase "it takes a village" was that really employed here with you? Like, do you feel like you've been mentored by? Even if people weren't sitting you down mentoring you, do you feel like you've been mentored by what you've experienced here in Fairfield? Mm-hmm. People, individuals sitting at Cafe P, showing people your,
Well, it's rare that happens.
It's rare that happens, but it's just even the knowledge you get from each person, because everybody's bringing all these different things into this stew we call Fairfield. Mm-hmm. There's so much here that we have an emphasis on music and the art community and acting, mm-hmm. Percentage-wise, we have a larger percentage in the arts here, I think, than many other towns, I would say, safely. Yeah. So again, I asked you in the beginning, what are your thoughts now as far as you do this? We've experienced this, visual arts conversation and also acting. What do we do about your future? I'm not quite sure we've decided what you should do.
I'm honestly a little bit frightened because I actually like writing is what I've been leaning towards very, very heavily, like writing and music being my two things. Right. Fiction recently, actually. I've recently discovered fiction, started writing fiction about 2 years ago as well. And so I'm actually not writing poetry very much anymore.
Right.
I'm more so just studying it, and like I just finished a class with Ed Folsom up at the University of Iowa, who's a Whitman scholar. He's one of the leading Whitman scholars in the, I believe, the world.
Beautiful.
And so it's just, I'm a little bit frightened because it's with the advent of film and with the pop culture around music. My music is much more folky, and it's and so it's. And
that's nothing to be afraid of.
No,
so I know with all the beats and dance stuff that's out there right now, that happens to be the trend.
There still is a market. It's just it's shrinking.
Well, I don't even know if I would call it that. I would say personally, I would say that folk. if you're going to call it folk, what you're doing, maybe the better term would be acoustic, or I think we've outgrown the word singer-songwriter now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I feel like you know what? There's always going to be a place for musics, different kinds of musics, no matter how popular American Idol or whatever is promoting like a certain style, or the pop charts are promoting a certain production value. It's still going to always come down to the song, and it's always going to come down to whatever personal performance you can have. So,
and you have to get
including in acting, including in how you're expressing yourself in art. It's always about how you genuinely. You said it earlier with tell the truth. It's about the truth. So, where do you see yourself maybe like 5 years from now?
Hopefully.
What's the fantasy? What do you want?
The fantasy would be published and a bit further along my music, to the point where I may be eventually trying to record. Possibly, I have a lot of learning to do with music. It's really hard to be a student and also write and learn music unless you are a music major. Because I'm an English student and a biology student currently.
Cool.
And like you would think English you would have time to write, but it's really the only writing time you have is essays.
Yeah, exactly. It's the assigned writing as opposed to like free writing. It's like writing.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we could go another hour just with you, sir. We could go one more hour.
Well, if I could just real quick with John's poem, which I really enjoyed, and the first time I heard it, maybe just a gentle qualifier about Fairfield. I see a lot of wonderful enthusiasm for the arts and talk about the arts and all that. But I'm reminded of Marianne Moore, the great poet. Marianne Moore's last line in her Ars Poetica poem, which is poems should not mean, they should be. And I'm hearing your oregano and the long list of sounds and just the cadence that you generate and the elasticity, the fun that and seriousness. And I think, well, should there be one sort of proviso that I would leave, is that John Keats, great poet John Keats, talked about negative capacity. What is that? Negative capacity is the willingness to prolong the mind's determination to confine an experience to a single thing, and how you prolong that is by observing. And a poem, a play, a painting is a gift by the artists who are so enthralled by the delivery, and that they have entered a kind of prolongation, a kind of negative capacity where they're not even concerned anymore with a outcome. They're suspended inside that presentational moment, and that's what you get. That's the vivid encounter that you get.
Did you have that experience with his poem?
Absolutely, and so we would be wise to maybe cultivate this in a community where there's some emphasis, maybe undue emphasis, on what's this for, and how can we utilize this? How can we put this?
I was schooled recently. I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I was schooled recently by David Hurlin, who knows my background as far as my being the very wonderful David Hurlin, who knows my background in the music business, knows I was working with an act for a couple of years, etc. And there was always a goal. And as opposed to, it was a situation where, I'll cut to the chase with this, but he knew that, there you go.
Yeah, no, you keep talking, and Jason, if he can focus in on that.
Here's the deal. I felt like by the end of the conversation, he randomly sat down at my table at Cafe P, and it was the moment where it made the most sense to me. I had to hear whatever this information was, I guess. It just came to me at that moment, nature organized, all that. But it was do the art for the art, and don't worry about the dumb marketing. And it's true, and I come from a history of both. I come from a history of having to juggle the creative art and to handhold with the artists and my own writing, and it not. I was shoehorned into like country when I was like, I'm not country music, but I was writing as I was anyway. All of that I understood perfectly, and then the marketing angle was like
I think you can go too far in both directions. I think
Yeah.
you can become cynically repackaging the same 8 songs,
and one of us has done that over the years.
You can also go too far and become too much of the pure artist who might hold an exhibition at the top of an 18-story building, and it's just
Performance art.
It's just too much to advertise. I'm not going to advertise this because it would create some sort of impurity in what I'm doing. I mean, that's the obvious
that's true.
exaggeration.
That's right.
But I mean, if you're going to take the time and trouble, I mean, I can only speak personally, but if I'm going to take the time and trouble to get 18 people and 30 people or whatever involved in doing Lear, I'm going to market the thing. I'm going to advertise it. I'm going to make sure not for financial reasons, but I'm going to make sure that I maximize the number of people who are actually going to be able to sit down and enjoy this thing. Because otherwise it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a waste of time, but it's not maximizing the possibility of the interaction.
Yeah.
And I'd say, sort of adding to that, when people think of people being on stage, and I think this relates in different ways to all of the arts, they always tend to think, oh, well, why do you act? Well, you act because at the end people applaud and they appreciate what you're doing. Isn't that nice? And of course, in this town, they always give you a standing ovation, more or less. If you manage to peel an orange without coughing, you'll get a standing ovation.
We've had conversations on the show about that. Yes.
But now I've lost my train of thought.
I was peeling the orange.
It was such a nice image. But in fact, what's important as an actor is not the moment of noise from the audience. Yeah. It's the experience of silence. When you're speaking, I mean, to give the silly example, friends, Romans, countrymen, and they're listening. And all the people that had coughs or leprosy or other communicable diseases
they brought that night with
before
them.
the show, and you hear them before and you think, oh my goodness, viral city. And mysteriously, all these people are temporarily cured because they're not really breathing. They're just watching. They're suspended in this silence which underlies, like the bass clef underneath the treble. The actor is speaking, but underneath is this silence, which is just a communicating channel between the audience and the performer.
Beautiful.
And that is what's the essential communication. That's what makes these things lively. And that's why truthfulness, which is what makes people quiet as an audience, the truthfulness is communicated, not the fakiness. Yeah. And the funny thing is that it sorts itself out. Because if something is fakey, if it's contrived, if it's done just for money, if it's done for the wrong reasons, it doesn't communicate that silence. The two things are immutable. You can't, if you try to push too much, if you've had again, in the music business, if you've had a successful single and you try and create one that's more or less the same, but you change up a few keys and you slightly change the bridge and you think, well, this will make, it doesn't. Right. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
If you've done one good painting and you think, well, somebody bought that, I'll create 50 others just like it, and you turn them out like pancakes, that doesn't work either.
Right.
And so you can't abuse that. That's one of the beautiful things about art or life or just the way these things work. There are certain immutable laws that only if it's truthful will it move people, will it absolutely slow them down to the point where they're so not only just suspended disbelief, which is the essential part of watching a theatrical performance, but they've actually suspended pretty much the metabolism while they're watching this. So when they leave, they've really had a feeling of catharsis. They've had a feeling of change. Right. They've had a feeling of having had a real experience.
Right.
And you can't fake that.
Right.
Because if you go to something that's really rather indifferent,
right,
or fakey or something, or it's not felt,
right,
then the audience will come away having had the feeling they've had a Chinese takeaway as opposed to having a real meal. Well, I'm sort of full, but that's as far as it goes. It's
beautiful.
Not very satisfying.
Beautifully said. All right, this was thoroughly satisfying. Speaking of satisfying, this has been. We could do another half hour, Jason. No, okay. So what we'll do instead is we've got to do this again sometime because this is just too much.
Give me 20 seconds, guy.
20 seconds.
Here's the handbook for how to get Fairfield right. Read it. And And then we'll break up into small discussion groups later. Pop quiz later on this afternoon. And if you could, Jason, just kind of focus it. Are you on this? Beautiful. All right. Then this is what we were looking at.
Beautiful. It's a picture of Jason, which is quite
Our man Jason. Beautiful.
nice.
Are we done? Beautiful. No, not yet.
We have to wrap up?
We have to wrap up.
We have to wrap up.
Oh, are there any other final thoughts?
Well, I suddenly remembered this poem I wrote when I was about his age or a little bit younger.
Okay. Gaily bedight, a gallant knight in sunshine in shadow. No, not El Dorado.
It's a poem which sort of sums up little bits of what we've been talking about, and I think I can remember it.
Okay.
And it's called Method. People wave their latest fan. I'm no social banality man. I've no wish to commit the enormity of being a sycophant to conformity. Observation brings the realization that normality destroys a civilization. Record, memorize, note the pleasure. Use this against that you cannot measure. Art, the mind's shielded featherbed, a glowing snuggery. By open commune with hill, wind, and tree, I hope to gain the freedom of sincerity.
I love that you mentioned Snuggies in there too.
Snuggery.
Oh, Snuggery. Oh.
Snuggery.
Oh.
Snuggery is a good room to have. Nowadays, this symbolizes our culture. It used to be called a snuggery. Now it's called a man cave.
And yeah, we're all going to have to leave this man cave today, right about now. But Fairfield 2.0 is the name of the show. Again, we're very grateful to have had Jim Weidel. And we also had Andrew Edlin and Mr. John Bovard to talk about all things, well, artistic today. This was a really wonderful show. Come back again sometime, Fairfield, and this is for you and about you. Thank you very much. Take care.